Hey, this is Joe from Home Studio Corner. If you've watched some of my videos, do you ever get the impression that I know exactly what to do in the studio? Well, newsflash, I don't. And today I want to share with you a story of frustration and delight when it came to mixing a vocal track. So here's the story. My subscriber, John, sends me an email and says he's afraid he has an unmixable vocal. He's recorded it, he's tried everything, he just can't get a mix that he's happy with. So my first impression was, well, I bet I can mix it. But aside from that, narcissism aside, I was thinking maybe it's just a recording problem. Maybe the mixing isn't the problem, but the recording itself is. So I said, hey, send me the vocal, let me listen to it. So I gave it a quick listen, and it sounded fine. I didn't hear anything technically wrong with the recording, like bad microphone placement, clipping, a big echoey room, and any of those kind of things that sometimes happen. So then I decided to take the vocal track along with the piano track and mix it myself, at least the vocal part, to give him some advice on how to approach mixing his own vocal, and B, to make a video for you so we could all learn something and get one step better at mixing vocals. Well, here's what happened. I played with the vocal for a few minutes, thought, okay, I figured it out. Let's roll the video. I start the video. I'm just cruising along, feeling proud of myself, gonna crush it yet again. And I got to the part where I played the mix, or I put together a mix of the vocal and hit play, and I just didn't like it. It sounded terrible. I didn't do what I wanted to do. I was sitting there trying to force myself to pretend that I liked it, when in reality, I didn't like it. So I stopped shooting the video. I got real mad at myself for a second, shut down the video recording software. Then I sat here for maybe another 20 minutes just messing with that vocal, and I ended up with 5 different mixes of this vocal, and I learned something really important, or maybe more accurately, I reminded myself of something that I regularly forget, and that something is this: keep things as simple as possible. Now, sometimes you're gonna need a complicated set of plugins to achieve the sound you're looking for, but I've found almost every time, if I've got a bunch of plugins doing a bunch of different things and I'm not sure if I like the sound, usually when I take those plugins away and start with something simpler, I end up liking the sound better. We have the kind of double-edged sword of having so many tools available to us that sometimes we can use too many and we end up hurting the sound more than helping it. So that was the lesson of the day. I want to take you into Studio One and show you what I did with this vocal, and hopefully you'll get some ideas. And if nothing else, you'll remember to go simple if you start to get too in the weeds with complicated plugin setups. Okay, here's the session. The vocal is up here in yellow. He sent me a piano track to play along to. Just a basic piano ballad. Let me turn the plugins off for a second and you can hear what the vocal sounds like.
When I feel I don't deserve you, I look into the rear view and I can see how much we both have grown.
Okay, so the thing that sticks out to me, aside from it just being a raw, unmixed vocal, is it's pretty nasal, right? I have nasal tones to my singing voice, and as we sing louder, we tend to get more nasally. The thing to keep in mind is there's always going to be air going through the nose, right? That's why when we hold our nose closed, our voice sounds different, because we're used to hearing it with some sound coming out of my mouth and some sound coming out of my nose. Singing's no different. That's why when you have a cold, your singing and speaking voice sounds weird because your nose is stopped up. I'm stuffy. So that's the idea. So it's not that we want to prevent all sound from coming through our nose. It's just recognizing that, especially when we push harder as singers, when we sing higher, it tends to come out of the nose more. And that can lead to this kind of sort of a frequency buildup. In those upper mid ranges, it can sound kind of, I call them nasally frequencies, or sometimes it can sound like a whistling that happens. And usually the solution is to go find that whistling frequency and notch it out. And that's where I started here, but then I kind of went off track. I'm going to take you on like a tour of what I did. So as you can see over here, I've got 5 different scenes. So the scenes in Studio One, they're mixed scenes, are just sets of plugins that I set up on this vocal. Hang on, let me undo that. So you can see the first one had that, second one had this, third one had this, fourth one had this, fifth one had this. So let me walk you through the first version of this. I decided to go straight for the multiband compressor because in my head, the problem was those upper mid-range. And so I wanted to use multiband to have the lowest band do nothing. And then this band here that's going from 878 hertz up to 8K, which is this frequency here,
When I feel I don't deserve you.
was going to slam down all those upper mids and tame things. And then the problem with that was then all the high frequencies, the sibilant sounds, became too loud. So then I used this upper part of this multiband compressor to tame it even further. So let me show you what the vocal sounds like when I have the plugins off, then I turn them on.
When I feel I don't deserve you. When I feel I don't deserve you.
So it's okay, but it's like crispy in the top end. I didn't love it very much. So we move on to scene 2. I decided to I literally just reset the multiband and tried it again, and I also put some regular compression and EQ after it, and just wasn't super happy with that result either.
When I feel I don't deserve you.
So the first one I thought was too bright, so I went more aggressive on these upper frequency compressors and left the low frequency band alone, I believe. Yeah, there's no compression happening here. So now it went from being kind of nasally and too bright to being almost muffled sounding.
When I feel I don't deserve you.
Wah, 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 wah. And then there's still that crispy top end. It's less than before, but it's still not great. So then I went to a third mix where I tried the multiband in different ways, more aggressive on the top end. Similar settings here, less EQ. And then I used some pretty dramatic regular old parametric EQ after the multiband and the compression to see if that would tame the problems I was hearing. I still did a big notch afterwards to try to get some of that upper mid frequencies taken care of. Did a low pass filter to make it not so sibilant and sizzly on top. And here's what that sounded like.
When I feel I don't deserve you, I look into the rear view. When I feel I don't deserve you.
Getting there, but that feels a little muffled and didn't feel quite right either. On to mix 4. For this one, I decided to do some notches first. As you can see from this EQ, finding some frequencies and notching those out. Boy, there's a lot of plugins here. Some of them aren't being used. Then I used a regular compressor to just get it a compressed sound. And then I tried the multiband compressor, but only compressing the really high stuff, so using it like a de-esser. You can see I'm really desperate to make this multiband work. There's a hint for you.
When I feel I don't deserve you, I look into the rear view
and this one has a better sibilance now. The top end feels right, and it's a little warmer. But I feel like there's still some kind of whistly sort of sounds in the upper mid-range.
When I feel I don't
that sort of sound that comes through when he sings the F. Here's no plugins.
When I feel
and then here's with plugins.
When I feel I don't deserve you.
So we made it just kind of ended up muffled. So we're either going with too bright or too muffled. And this is the point where I quit and got angry. Went for a walk. Yelled at the cat. Okay. By the way, when I did the last video, my cat Wayne was in the chair next to me the entire video. It was so super cute. He reached out and touched me with his paw. And then the video sucked, and now he's gone. So, all right. Okay, so here is the final version, and I might listen to this right now, and I might tell you, nope, that's not it either. But I want to tell you what I did here in the final version. So I decided to go simpler. So let me ignore these gray plugins here. Those are just ones that I turned off. I tried some things, and I went back for something very simple, which was just find those resonant frequencies that are ringing. So in his voice, his is more nasal than average, and there's a lot of like coming through. And it's not going to change. Taking these down isn't going to change the tone of his voice in the sense of it's still going to sound like him singing. But that whistling that's jumping out of the speakers at us is what we need to take care of. So if I turn off all these plugins, you can hear just one more time.
When I feel I don't deserve you.
It's like the concentration of energy in that upper mid-range is pretty high. So I grabbed an EQ and I found where these whistly frequencies are happening. And the first one I found was up here at about 3.4K. I'm going to turn down the volume here so I don't blow you out, but here is what that frequency sounds like.
When I feel I don't deserve you.
So I took that one down, okay? Then I went down. I knew there was one maybe like an octave down from that I could hear. So once that one was down, right, we went from this
when I feel I don't deserve you
to this.
When I feel I don't deserve you.
So I'm still hearing some sort of whistly frequencies in there. So I went down an octave from 3.42 down to 1.58, which sounds like this when I boost it.
When I feel I don't.
So that's coming through. So I pull that down. So now it's sounding a little bit smoother.
When I feel I don't deserve you.
But then I thought, and a lot of times I think if I have to do more than this, something else is wrong. But this vocal needed some extra attention. So I went and found another frequency that was just a little bit lower than 3K and found there was another kind of whistling, ringing frequency there.
When I feel I don't deserve you.
Now, the way I find these is not that I boost a frequency and listen for something that sounds bad, because any frequency you boost like that is going to sound bad. I'm listening for frequencies that jump out like that just did. Between two notes, it went from, and then it went real loud for a second. That's what I'm talking about. There's this resonance, whether it's in the room, in the microphone, in the nasal cavity. I still don't know where it's coming from, but I find it specifically on vocals in the nasalness of them, up in this 1 to 5K range. I'll find it a lot. So we go, let me give you the before and after now that I've taken all three of these down. Here's the before, and then I'll just hit it again with the after.
When I feel I don't deserve you. When I feel I don't deserve you. When I feel I don't deserve you. When I feel I don't deserve you.
It's not perfect, but now that those all frequencies that were kind of whistling through on every loud vowel sound, they're suddenly tamed. So for me, this approach is just getting the vocal to a flatter frequency response, so now we can do our mixing. It's kind of if you think about my 5-step mixing process, which is to set up the session, do a static mix, fix the big problems first, and then do top-down mixing where we do our EQ and our compression, where we have all the fun. That fixing big problems is handy because you can't really do top-down mixing well if there are big problems like this. So these are the big problems in this vocal that I say we fixed now. Now we can start to try to address it a little bit more. So the next thing I did was, add this fat channel here with just some compression to give me like a nice aggressive compressed sounding vocal.
When I feel I don't deserve you. When I feel I don't deserve you. When I feel I don't deserve you.
It's a little more upfront, a little more compressed, a little more kind of what you expect out of more of a pop vocal, and then maybe a little bit of EQ to take down some mid-range that's still there.
When I feel I don't deserve you, I look into the rear.
And now with the compression and the EQ there's a little more sibilance, and that's just a byproduct of having too much compression. So I went before the compressor, I don't know why I just did, to add multiband dynamics, but this time it's only compressing these high frequencies. So it's acting like a de-esser on everything above 8.5K. So it's listening to these frequencies, just where the sibilance comes through, and it gives it a little bit of a smoothness there so we can hear the brightness of the vocal and the S's aren't too loud.
When I feel I don't deserve you.
So you hear those S's sit right on top of the volume, but they don't jump louder. That's what I was going for. Then I decided to throw in just a little bit of this big plate reverb that I love.
When I feel I...
Just way in the background, and then a little tiny bit of stereo slapback delay too to give it some space.
When I feel...
Just a little single repeat there, and then add that in with the vocal. And this is a vocal add that in with the piano, and I'm a lot happier with where this vocal is compared to where it was at the beginning when I was really frustrated.
When I feel I don't deserve you, I look into the rear view, and I can see how much we both have grown.
Now, there's still frequencies that are jumping out. Still, the upper mid-range might be a bit much. So maybe we come in and we find something like 4K and bring that down a little bit.
When I feel I don't deserve you, I look into the rear view, and I can see how much we both have.
And we can maybe get a little more compression out of this too, so those louder parts get slammed down a little more.
When I feel I don't deserve you, I look into the rear view, and I can see how much we both have grown.
So I feel like that is a tremendous change. Let me save this real quick before I lose it. Update scene from where we were before, which was this.
When I feel I don't deserve you, I look into the rear view.
We've given it some control. We've controlled those upper frequencies. We've given it some space. We've given it some smoothness and some dynamic control. So now it sits and is a lot more pleasant to listen to in the mix.
When I feel I don't deserve you, I look into the rear view and I can see how much we both have grown.
So one thing to keep in mind is you're not going to change the singer himself or the singer herself, right? This still sounds like the singer. They're not going to come back and say, oh, you changed the entire tone of my voice. This is going to sound like them. So don't expect to be able to use some EQ and, you put in like a 13-year-old kid who's learning how to sing and then it comes out as Adele, right? None of that's going to happen, but we can go in and we can take what we've got and use just our basic tools like EQ and maybe a little bit of multiband to smooth things out, to kind of rearrange the frequencies in such a way that they're a lot more pleasant to listen to, and there aren't certain frequencies jumping out and giving us headaches. For me, the headache frequencies are those upper mids that we've been listening to, but also the lower mids where things get warm and muddy and kind of gross. You'll notice too, I didn't show this, but I did use a high-pass filter on the lows as well to make sure that muddiness didn't happen. I know this was a bit rambly today, but I want to do these kind of videos every once in a while just to give you an idea of what it looks like to be in the studio and to be wrestling with a part. This is a pretty normal part of the process. Sometimes I dial it in and it's perfect or really close to perfect right out of the gate. Sometimes I've got to do multiple versions of the vocal, and it usually happens on lead vocal, especially if it's not my lead vocal, so it's someone else's where I've just dialed in my own voice so many times I know how to do it. But for other singers, I'm literally thinking of different client sessions where got approval on the entire mix, but we had to go back and forth a couple of times on the lead vocal to get that tone right. And it's usually something like this. There are certain frequencies that are just being jerks, and you got to find the right tool to make them better. But for me, today, the right tool was using just a bunch of EQ notches versus the multiband. Now, some will leave comments and saying dynamic EQ might have been perfect in this situation, and maybe you're right. I did a video on that recently, how I just don't use dynamic EQ because I just never have, and I get what I need to get done with regular EQ or multiband compression. But maybe that would have made this process a little less frustrating for me. I honestly don't know, and I'm okay with saying that I might be wrong about that because this vocal that I got here, I'm pretty happy with, and I think the client would be happy with it as well. All right, that's it for this video. My name is Joe from Home Studio Corner. If you haven't checked out my 5-step mix guide that I mentioned earlier, it's a 5-step process that I take every mix through from beginning to end, and it kind of gives you can still make lots of creative decisions. I'm not going to tell you what EQ setting to use, but I am going to tell you what framework to use to kind of think about it as like trail markers to make sure you're on the path and you're making your way towards the finish line and you're not off lost in the woods doing something crazy. And being distracted by all the tools and the shiny objects in front of you. You can get that absolutely free at 5stepmix.com. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.